There's this huge looming question that's probably been hovering in the back of your mind lately. We are living in this era of just unbelievable technological acceleration. And honestly, it's bringing up a very real, very widespread anxiety. Is artificial intelligence actually going to make human workers obsolete? It's literally the headline everywhere you look. But today, in this explainer, we're cutting through the hype and diving straight into the hard data.
Seriously, is AI really coming for your job? Take a second and just let that sink in. Because it's so easy to feel this sense of dread, right? We see machines writing flawless code, drafting massive legal briefs, or spitting out stunning artwork in seconds. But when we actually sit down and analyze the economic models and the corporate data, the reality of what's about to happen to the workforce is way more nuanced. And frankly, it's incredibly fascinating.
Okay, let's start with the hard numbers. Based on some really extensive microeconomic modeling from Boston Consulting Group, or BCG, only about 10 to 15% of jobs in the US are projected to be eliminated by AI in the next few years. Now, that number is definitely significant, and we absolutely can't ignore the transition costs for those workers, but it's a far cry from that total human obsolescence scenario that the extreme tech optimists and pessimists have been yelling about. Now, what's genuinely super interesting here is the bigger picture. When you consider that massive 55% chunk of the workforce, the vast majority of jobs will not be eliminated. They're just going to be fundamentally reshaped. Add to that the 30% of jobs with limited exposure, roles that require heavy physical presence or really complex human interaction, and a super clear theme starts to emerge. AI isn't coming for your job, but a human using AI might. But before we get too deep into the macroeconomic impacts and how these jobs are actually changing, we gotta clear up some common misconceptions. Which brings us to our first section, defining the baseline, what AI actually is. So, drawing on frameworks from the OECD and the new EU AI Act, we really need to stop thinking of AI as this conscious sci fi entity or a strict one to one human replacement. Instead, think of it as a highly advanced prediction and automation tool designed to execute very specific, structured tasks. It just takes in data, recognizes patterns, and spits out a probable output. It's less like the Terminator and honestly more like autocomplete on absolute steroids. When you reframe it as a tool rather than a replacement, well, the economic shifts we're about to cover make a whole lot more sense. Because when you put a powerful new tool into the hands of millions of workers, you trigger massive shifts in corporate output. That leads us right into our next section, the productivity boom, amplifying human performance. The numbers here are just staggering. According to the 2026 PwC AI Jobs Barometer, which, by the way, analyzed over 1 billion job ads globally, productivity growth is 40% higher at companies most exposed to AI compared to those least exposed. 40%! In economic terms, a 40% divergence is basically an earthquake. And it gets even wilder at the very top. There is this pronounced superstar effect happening right now. The top fifth of these AI-exposed companies are hitting an unbelievable 163% productivity growth on average. I mean, they are completely pulling away from the pack and creating this insane competitive advantage just by integrating these tools into their daily operations. And this perfectly illustrates the myth versus the reality of the AI revolution. The big fear is always that these superstar companies are getting this productivity by just firing everyone and slashing wages, right? But the data actually shows the exact opposite. The companies seeing the biggest gains aren't just cutting costs. They are using AI to unlock brand new growth and break into totally new markets. And as a result, they're actually seeing faster headcount growth and faster wage growth than the companies that are ignoring AI. So if these companies are hiring more people and paying them more, what exactly are these employees doing all day? Well, that brings us to the next section, the Great Reshaping, how jobs are actually changing. PwC's data shows that AI is doing something really interesting. It's democratizing some jobs by making them way easier for beginners to do. But much more importantly, it is professionalizing others. A professionalized job is basically a role where AI sucks up all the routine, mundane, boring tasks, which leaves the human worker totally free to focus entirely on high-value, complex decisions and expert judgment. And let me tell you, the market is rewarding professionalization heavily right now. These professionalized jobs are growing twice as fast as the democratized roles, and because these workers are delivering so much more strategic value, they're commanding 42% higher wage growth since 2021. So this is exactly the reshaping BCG predicted. Your job isn't gone, it's just leveled up. But this leveling up definitely has a side effect. It basically compresses the traditional career ladder. Since AI can now handle all that basic entry-level execution, things like initial research, rough drafting, or writing basic code, junior workers are now expected to use these tools to do really complex strategic thinking right from day one. In fact, PwC found that AI-exposed junior roles are a whopping 7 times more likely to demand traditionally senior skills, like leadership and strategic thinking. Let's ground this with a concrete example, like a software engineer. Before AI, an engineer would spend a massive chunk of their week just doing repetitive coding, checking syntax, hunting down that one missing semicolon. After AI, those tasks are fully automated. So now the engineer is expected to act more like a system-level orchestrator. They're spending their time on architectural trade-offs, complex system design, and just making sure the AI's output actually aligns with the business goals. The human is still very much in the loop, but their cognitive load has completely shifted from basic execution to high-level judgment.
Okay, so how do companies actually make this happen? To really capture these benefits, we need to look at our next section, redesigning the workflow, the MIT paradigm. MIT's Sloan research came up with a really critical insight here. Businesses cannot just awkwardly plug AI into their old processes. They have to fundamentally redesign how the work actually flows. And the secret to unlocking massive growth is a concept called task chaining. Basically, this means grouping and linking multiple adjacent tasks together so the AI just executes them as one continuous sequence. Why? Because every single time work is passed back and forth between a human and a machine, it creates what they call a coordination tax, a total bottleneck of review and validation. Think about how this completely changes the daily grind. In the old workflow, human does tasks A, B, and C sequentially. But in an optimized AI workflow, you just let the AI handle tasks A and B entirely end-to-end. By doing that, you eliminate all those friction-heavy handoffs. The human doesn't waste precious time reviewing task A before starting task B. Instead, they're completely freed up to take on totally new, higher-value tasks, like C and D.
System-level efficiency beats task-level perfection. I really want to let that sink in for a second because this is exactly where most organizations just get it completely wrong. Leaders really need to stop obsessing over whether an AI tool is 100% perfect at one tiny isolated task. Even if a human can do task A slightly better, handing that whole chain over to the AI improves the speed and the output of the entire workflow. It is all about the total output, not micromanaging the bot.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. The macro trends, the data on wages, the workflow redesigns. So let's bring all this data together into our final section, Adapting to the AI Era, your playbook. Drawn straight from the BCG, PwC, and MIT data we've been exploring, here is your personal blueprint, broken down into 3 super actionable steps. First, pursue new growth over mere efficiency by really focusing on your judgment. Second, master these AI tools, not so you can do less work, but so you can vastly expand your total output. And third, relentlessly redesign your daily workflow to take advantage of that task chaining we just talked about. Because remember, AI automates tasks. It does not automate entire jobs. So your most valuable assets moving forward are these heavily human-intensive skills that algorithms just literally cannot replicate. We're talking about real empathy, complex interpersonal judgment, true blank canvas creativity, and system-level orchestration. If the AI is handling the execution, you are getting paid for your humanity and your leadership.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to carry with you. The data is incredibly clear. The future belongs to those who use technology to amplify their own expertise, not those who try to hide from it. So will you let AI merely automate your tasks, or will you use it to fundamentally expand your potential? Make sure you stay curious, keep yourself updated on how AI is impacting the workforce and business, and hey, thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.